Week 5, Sunday's picks for the NFL. I've got them for you. My name's CJ Curry. If you're new to the channel, get subscribed right now. Hit the subscribe button. We're on our way to 25,000 subs. I can't thank you guys enough for hitting the subscribe button and hitting those likes each and every video and leaving those comments down in the comment section. It's really helping the channel grow. So thank you for the glow up. Today's video, we are sticking to all quarterbacks and running backs, and we are sticking to fantasy scores. That's right, fantasy scores over on PrizePicks. There's a lot of value in a lot of these picks, and you're going to notice that all of these picks have a certain theme or certain thing in common. They're all from high-scoring games, and they're all going to be guys who are going to have the football in their hands. Again, it's quarterbacks and running backs. So let's go ahead and slide on over to the PrizePicks board. Now, if you guys aren't playing on PrizePicks yet, it's a great time to get signed up. The first $5 that you play on PrizePicks, they're going to give you $50 back. So awesome opportunity, awesome promotion that they're running. Use promo code CJ Curry. There's a special link for you down in the description of today's video. Now, speaking of promos, PrizePicks isn't the only show in town that's running promotions this weekend. In fact, there's a promotion going on tonight over on a site called Better. Now, some of you have heard of Better. This is Jake Paul's daily fantasy pick'em app. They're running an Alex Pereira free square. In case y'all don't know who that is, that's a UFC champion right there. All right, all he has to do is record one significant strike, and basically it's a winning pick. So that's one that's available to all Better users. They've also got another one for new Better users. It's going to be Justin Fields of the Pittsburgh Steelers. If he completes one pass in tomorrow's games, well, that's also a winning pick, a free square, in other words, for you. So you can get both of those over on Better Picks. They're also going to do an instant deposit match for you up to $200. So I've left a special link down in the description of today's video if you want to take advantage of these free squares and that deposit match. Use promo code CJ Curry to get that. Now, Sunday morning, we got a game over in London, and Parlay Play is running a free square as well. So they've got Aaron Rodgers discounted all the way down to 0.5 passing yards, meaning if he has at least one or more passing yards, it's a free pick, a winning pick. So you guys can take advantage of Parlay Play as well. They offer alt lines. You could play softer lines, which makes it easier for you to win money over there. And they've got all your favorite sports, just like PrizePicks. So I've also left a link for them down in the description. You could use promo code CJ Curry, take advantage of this free square, and they're going to match you dollar for dollar all the way up to $100. A first time instant deposit match is waiting for you below. All right, so what do we have for today's slate? Well, we've got quite a few different options. I've got 6 different picks. You probably don't want to play these all together, or maybe you do. Maybe you want to go for the 25X. It's really hard to hit 6 out of 6. Maybe you want to take your favorite picks and combine them with the ones that you like from today's video. But let's go ahead and take a look at today's NFL slate for the Sunday, Week 5 Sunday game. So going over here, I'm going to take a look at some of these high-scoring games, starting with this one, which is going to be the Buffalo Bills-Houston Texans game. This one's got an implied total of 47 points between these two teams. That's a whole lot of points expected to be scored, a lot of offense. We don't have to worry about any weather issues because this game's being played in a dome in Houston. And Josh Allen's looking to bounce back after a rough game against the Baltimore Ravens just 1 week ago. And we're going to start with him, Josh Allen, quarterback of the Buffalo Bills. He's over on PrizePicks at 20 fantasy score. And at 20 fantasy score, I think there's some upside here for Josh Allen playing on the road. Now, normally on the road, I like taking the overs on quarterbacks. When a team is expected to score a lot of points like the Buffalo Bills are, and they're playing on the road, usually the quarterback's going to have to be heavily involved. Now, if a team's playing at home, I like taking the overs on running backs, especially fantasy score, because if that team's favored to win at home, you know, there's a good chance they're going to be playing with a lead late into the game, and then they could turn the ball over to their run game and chew up some of that clock. But nonetheless, Josh Allen looking good here for more than 20 fantasy score. Now, what I do is I go out and look at the sharpest NFL projection models that I have access to. That would be Fantasy Labs, that would be the Blitz, and that would be RotoWire. And I take a look at their projections for these, and we're using DraftKings projections because DraftKings projections are the most similar to the way that PrizePicks does their fantasy scoring. So let's start with Josh Allen here, going up against the Houston Texans. First and foremost, how does the matchup look on paper? Well, according to RotoWire here, based on the fantasy points allowed by the Houston Texans to opposing quarterbacks, they're giving up about 18.6 fantasy points per game to opposing QBs, which puts them closer to the top. To put this in context for you, the Jacksonville Jaguars are allowing the most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks with 23.7 per game. Houston sitting at 18.6, so that puts them right around the top 10, top 12 most generous when it comes to fantasy score allowed to opposing QBs. So how do the projections look? Now that we know that the matchup's good, it's a high-scoring game. Well, the projections look pretty good here for Josh Allen. Taking a look at RotoWire first and foremost, they have him projected at 21.36 fantasy scores. So he's at 20 on PrizePicks, 21.36 over on RotoWire, taking on the Houston Texans. I also like using Fantasy Labs. A guy named Sean Kerner, one of the sharpest minds in fantasy football. He creates the projections over on Fantasy Labs, and they've got Josh Allen going for 21.12 fantasy score. Let me isolate that for you so you can see it a little bit better. 21.12, so that does put him over 20. He's got a ceiling or a potential high mark of around 32.6 fantasy score. So if everything goes well, Josh Allen has the potential to have a monster game here going up against Houston. Now let's get you a third and final projection. This one's going to be brought to you by The Blitz, which is by my guy, Derek Carty, one of the best, again, projection models out there when it comes to fantasy football. If I scroll down, you can see just under my portrait here that he is projected for 22.4 fantasy score, the highest projection of the three projection models that we took a look at. So Josh Allen for more than 20 fantasy score looks good. So staying on this game here, we're going to go back to the other side of this game and look at young CJ Stroud. That's right. 18 fantasy score. This one, again, looking like another over option. We already talked about the high implied total. We talked about that these two guys are going to be duking it out. Should be a very competitive game. And CJ Stroud, probably going to try to get the ball to Stephon Diggs. It's a Stephon Diggs revenge game going up against his former team, the Buffalo Bills. But also like Nico Collins here, just as a side note, a side piece. So CJ Stroud's in a good spot, but so is Nico Collins. Stephon Diggs in a pretty decent spot as well. So those are just some other names to kind of keep an eye on. But take a look at Stroud here at 18 fantasy score. Let's go run the projections on him. We're going back over here to RotoWire. Again, I don't make these projections. Projections can be wrong. They will be wrong. Nobody ever gets all of their picks right, but it's a good resource or tool, something to kind of look at, a data point to kind of compare to PrizePicks and see where we can find an advantage here. Now, RotoWire, they've got them at 18.43, so kind of right around that 18 fantasy score mark. But in terms of the projection for Fantasy Labs has them at a bit of a higher number. Let's go take a look at where Sean Kerner's got him at 20.1 fantasy score. So that puts him over 18 fantasy score by 2.1 to be exact. And then finally, the Blitz by my guy, Mr. Carty. He's going to have CJ Stroud up there as well at 20.45 fantasy score. So more than 2 fantasy score higher than his line and where he sits over on PrizePicks. And as far as the matchup goes, I mean, Buffalo hasn't really been tested by any elite quarterbacks yet. I mean, Kyler Murray was one of the ones that you saw kind of decent game. Lamar Jackson had a pretty decent game, but they pretty much just ran the ball down the Bills' throats with Derrick Henry in that game. So we'll see how things kind of pan out here for CJ Stroud and this high-powered Houston Texans passing attack. They're going to be without Joe Mixon, just more reason for them to maybe throw the ball more. All right, speaking of Lamar Jackson, I just kind of name dropped him. Let's go and take a look at that game. The Baltimore Ravens are going to be in another high-scoring affair on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals. And I was debating between mentioning Lamar Jackson or his running back, Derrick Henry. Both guys are in really good spots. I like both of them here for more on their fantasy score. But I decided to go with Lamar Jackson because, again, they're going to be playing on the road here. Baltimore is favored by 2.5 points, but normally I like taking the overs on running backs when they're favorited and they're playing at home. In this case, Baltimore will be visiting Cincinnati in this case, but still 2.5 point favorite. So I like what I saw out of Jaden Daniels against the Cincinnati Bengals recently. I think if Lamar Jackson can give us, a couple of touchdown passes and some rushing yards and maybe even a rushing touchdown, he's going to sail past this fantasy score of 21.0 over on PrizePicks. So let's go ahead and plug Lamar Jackson in as our next pick. I think he looks good from a fantasy score perspective. Lots of different ways he could get it done for you through the air, on the ground, and he can get you touchdowns in multiple ways as well. So 21 fantasy score going up against the Cincinnati Bengals defense. That's not very good. If you'd rather take Derrick Henry here instead of Lamar Jackson, I can't blame you. King Henry has been absolutely stellar over the last couple of weeks, and the Cincinnati Bengals stink in terms of stopping the run. So there's a lot to like about Derrick Henry as well. But taking a look here at this matchup, going back over here to the quarterback section and just seeing what the Bengals have given up. They're giving up about 17 fantasy score per game through 4 weeks of this season. Again, this is one of the best quarterbacks in terms of fantasy score production in Lamar Jackson. So even though they don't rank very high, kind of a middle of the pack defense in terms of fantasy points allowed to the position, I still think this is a very good spot here for Lamar to get the job done. Now, let's go take a look at the projections, because who cares what I think? I lean on these tools. I lean on these projections. And this first projection has him at 21.4 fantasy score. He's cleared this number of 21 in the last 2 weeks, and 3 out of the 4 weeks overall for the season. So another good spot here for Lamar to hopefully get the job done. Second projection, we're going back over to Fantasy Labs and seeing what Sean Kerner's got him for. Kerner's got him at 21.4 fantasy score as well. So pretty tight number at 21. I think PrizePicks has set a pretty sharp line here, but the Blitz has him higher than 21 fantasy score. So let's go plug that one in. They got him at 21.8. So a little bit higher than the Fantasy Labs and RotoWire models. Everyone's got him slightly over 21 fantasy scores. So we're going to lean over as well and hope that Lamar Jackson has a huge game. Now, we've covered a couple of different games. Let's take a look at this next game here. I'm looking at the San Francisco 49ers to put up some points, and they've got, another one of those games where it's going to be a very, very high implied total. 49 projected points between the Cardinals and 49ers in this game, and I'm really liking the quarterback here for San Francisco as well as the running back. Probably wouldn't play these two guys in the same slip. Probably would be better off splitting these guys up and playing them in multiple entries. The way that PrizePicks penalizes you for putting multiple players from the same team or multiple players from the same game in one entry, it's just not worth doing. So break these guys apart. Play Purdy in one, play the next guy we'll talk about in the other. We'll get to him in just a minute. But let's start with Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers. Again, a high-scoring game. He's going to be playing at home. San Francisco, a 7-point favorite in this one. He is projecting very well today on his fantasy score. He's sitting at just 19 right now over on PrizePicks, taking on an Arizona Cardinals defense that has been pretty giving when it comes to fantasy score to opposing QBs. In fact, they're giving up about 20.1 fantasy points per game through the first 4 weeks of the NFL season, which is the 5th most fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position in that span. So Purdy's definitely in a good spot here in a high-scoring game. Now, what about the projections? Well, the projections look good for him as well, or else I wouldn't be talking about him. This first projection sitting right around 19 at 18.72, so pretty sharp. It's closer to 19 than 18, so we're right in the ballpark. But the projections get better on these other models, and when you kind of aggregate all of these models together, you'll see why I'm liking me some Brock Purdy over 19 fantasy score. He's at 20.37 according to Fantasy Labs, so good projection there, putting him over that 19 number by almost 2 points. And then last but not least, the Blitz has him all the way up at 21.93 fantasy score. Nearly 22 fantasy points. Almost 3 fantasy points higher than where he's at on PrizePicks. And so, again, the 19 number, I think, is very good. Now, let's talk about the other guy that's going to be in the backfield with him. That's going to be Mason. He is sitting at 16.5 fantasy score. Again, Arizona is just a team defensively who has not been very great this season. If we go over to the running back position and we take a look at the most fantasy points given up to opposing running backs by a defense, Arizona sits at 4th highest, the 4th most fantasy points per game given up to opposing RBs. And so Mason sitting there at 16.5 fantasy score looks like he is in a great spot. We're talking about a team that's given up 5 rushing touchdowns to opposing backs. So if he falls into the end zone, I would not be surprised whatsoever. In terms of the projections, let's go take a look at them. First projection for Jordan Mason, he's sitting out at about 16 fantasy score on RotoWire. So they got him a little bit under at 16.5, sitting at 16, but he has gone over in 3 out of 4 weeks thus far. But you're going to get some better projections here when you look at some of these other projection models. So let's go do that real quick. We'll go over to the running back position, type in Mason's name. You can see he's projected for about 18.2 fantasy score, which puts him over by nearly 2 whole fantasy points versus his line over on PrizePicks. Now, the Blitz is also loving themselves some Jordan Mason this week. They've got Mason projected all the way up at 20.2 fantasy score. Again, his line is just 16.5. So with that type of differential, I think it's worth rolling the dice on, worth taking a shot on in a prime matchup here for Mr. Jordan Mason. With San Francisco playing at home and being 7-point favorites, they could give this guy the rock 15 to 20 times and just milk that clock toward the end of the game. Which brings us to another running back to close out today's video. I'm talking about Kyren Williams, a guy who has a nose for the end zone, taking on the Green Bay Packers. 17 fantasy score is entirely too low. He is projecting very nicely today. First and foremost, let's look at the matchup. Running backs versus the Green Bay Packers. Packers haven't been great against the run game. 24 fantasy points on average per game through the first 4 weeks, which puts them right around the top 12-ish most fantasy points allowed, top 10-ish number. So very good matchup here for Kyren Williams. And I do like the Green Bay Packers side of this game as well. Jordan Love, Dontavius Wicks, Jaden Reed, all those guys are in really good spots as well. But we're talking Rams here. And Kyren Williams over 17 fantasy score looks like he's in a fine position to clear this number once again. So let's go look at his projections. Starting with RotoWire again, they're coming through with some more conservative numbers. 16.91 puts you really, really close to that 17 marker. He has cleared this quite easily over the last couple of weeks. I expect him to have every opportunity to clear this again. He is in a very high scoring game. You're going to notice the trend here, 48.5 implied points, playing at home as the Rams host the Green Bay Packers. So I'm sticking to high total games. I'm sticking to quarterbacks. I'm sticking to running backs, guys that I know are going to have the football in their hand and get the touches that we need to hopefully come through on these fantasy scores. Second projection for you, we're going back to Fantasy Labs, and we're taking a look at Kyren Williams over there. And at 17 fantasy score on PrizePicks, you're seeing a projection of 19.92. Thanks to our guy Sean Kerner and his fantasy projection for Kyren Williams. And last but not least, let's swing it on over to the Blitz to close out today's video. Kyren Williams, 23.59 fantasy score according to the Blitz. They've got him going over 17 fantasy score by a country mile, by a wide margin, by more than 6 fantasy points. Now, these projections could be wrong. They have been wrong in the past. Fair warning, nothing's a lock, nothing's a guarantee. We're gambling, there's risk involved here. But with that type of differential, it's worth taking the risk. It's worth taking a chance on these. So there's 6 different picks for you. I got more picks waiting for you over in my Dub Club. If you're looking for a kick butt community, a place where you can share your ideas, get ideas from others. We're sharing picks, plays, parlays, stats, and information. Anything we can do to help one another win more, we're doing it. So check out the comment down in the comment section below, the top pinned comment if you want to join the Dub Club, or check the description if you want the link to that. What do you guys think? There's 6 picks for you. Like I said, you don't have to take them all. You don't have to take any of them. You can take 1 or 2 or none. It's up to you guys. But down in the description, down in the comment section, leave me a comment. Let me know. Are you liking these, hating these? Tell me why. I'd like to get your feedback. Good luck on your picks, plays, and parlays. You run these likes up. I'll come back for a Monday Night Football video for you guys real soon.